All right. Especially for our new council members, but I hope this is a helpful refresher for some people who've served on the council in the past. I wanted to take us through just a little bit of an orientation and maybe address some of the questions that have probably come to you over the course of the meeting today, and hopefully prompt some additional questions for you. We're going to record this orientation and make it available for other people as a resource to refer back to. And it's something that we can continue to keep updated in the future. So one of the things I always want to emphasize when working with the council is that our work really is driven by Montana law. There is authorizing statute in Montana code for the Montana Geospatial Information Act. And that act talks about the makeup of the council, the duties of the state library and the council in supporting the Geospatial Information Act. I'll go into a little bit more detail about appointments and compensation in just a little bit, but I think it's really important to know that there is a legal basis and some statutory obligations that we as a council have to meet, and that also helps to underpin the importance and value of our work. As I mentioned earlier, the statute, the Montana Land Information Act, was originally passed in 2005 and was substantially amended in 2023 after a period of time of recognizing that there was an opportunity to improve the statutes to better align with the nature of how we conduct our business and to better meet the needs of the GIS community. The other point I wanted to make here is that while the statute was passed in 2005, predating all of that work were a significant number of GIS professionals who met and provided GIS coordination on a regular basis, really dating back to the 1980s and the 1990s. MGIC, which I'm struggling to not confuse with MGAC with all these silly acronyms, certainly predates the MLIAC Council. So by no means did this work begin in 2005. It was just really codified for the first time in 2005. So, we really stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. Like I said, I'll go into a little bit more detail about the council members themselves, your appointments, terms, and compensation in just a bit. I know this is probably pretty small. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit, maybe. Maybe not. I wanted to show you an org chart for the state library itself, so you have an understanding of who we are as an organization and where this council falls in relationship to that organization. The Montana State Library is an agency of the executive branch of state government, so we fall under the authority of the governor. And the governor appoints 5 of the 7 members of the State Library Commission. The commission, as I've said, is the governing body for the state library. So they are the body that is responsible for hiring and overseeing the state librarian and my work. They are responsible for setting policies and standards for the agency, adopting administrative rules. They set our budget and evaluate our financial reports and serve as that governing role for us. And so in the advisory function that this council plays, you are really advising the commission and sharing your opinions about the topics that are proposed either through this council or by staff to the commission. Our commission meets 6 times a year in February, April, June, August, October, and December. It's typically the second Wednesday of the month. Sometimes those vary. And so, as Erin was pointing out, we try to align the council meetings so that if there's important council business that then needs to be taken to the commission, those meetings coincide. And I can't say this strongly enough. We value so much the input from the council and from the wider GIS community in the deliberations that we make as an agency, because we will not be successful in meeting our goals of providing useful information to all of you if we're not communicating and working in partnership with all of you. Let's see if I can um, increase this just a little bit. In terms of the State Library Commission themselves, there are 7 members. As I said, 5 of them are appointed by the governor. The superintendent of public instruction serves on the State Library Commission, and then an appointee of the Commissioner of Higher Education is also on the State Library Commission. I report directly to them, and then we have a very flattened org chart. We have a number of leads that provide program oversight and staff supervision for the agency. Evan Hammer reports directly to me as the digital library administrator, and then the staff that were introduced to you report to him, or some of them report to other leads. So Aaron, as the GIS coordinator, reports directly to Evan. Michael Fashaway, as the land information lead, reports to Evan. Troy Blandford, as the water information lead, reports to Evan. Kazi Arifutsman, the RTN coordinator, reports to Evan, and so forth. And then we have a number of GIS analysts and GIS specialists and techs who work for a variety of staff. I'll share those names with you as we get a little bit further in the orientation. That gives you a little bit of an idea of the organizational structure for the State Library. One other point that I wanted to make, we talk about the digital library being the home for our collections of data and information resources. The other role of the State Library is to support the development of libraries around the state. And the State Library has only had statutory responsibility for what was the Land Information Advisory Council since about 2013. It wasn't originally housed under the State Library. But in 2013, we and the State Information Technology Services Division took a legislative proposal to the legislature to move that authority under the State Library, because we recognize that the work of developing collections of data and providing access to that information really more closely aligned with the work of the library than it does with the work of the state's technology bureau to provide enterprise technology to state government. That proposal to the legislature was really widely accepted and adopted, and I think it's been a really nice home for this work since that time. And our mission of providing access to information to help people make good decisions in their lives, I think is really the mission of the work of our GIS coordination and data development. We have another org chart for our agency. I call it our hippy dippy org chart, and it's very colorful and sort of free flowing. And one thing it does is recognize that a lot of the work that we do is about engaging with our users. And so in that sort of hippy dippy model, we consider Erin a part of our user services work group, because she really is that front-facing liaison with the public in making sure that we are doing the work that's necessary to help us develop data and make sure that that data is useful and meaningful to our GIS community. And she also works a lot with our other user services staff, like the staff that are working to support libraries, because we see the value and importance of using GIS data in that work as well. I'll point out too that we also have another advisory council. We call it our Network Advisory Council, and that is a council of librarians who advise us on the work that we do to help support libraries around the state. Are there any questions about our organizational chart? Like I said, I'll actually share some names of staff with you a little bit later on. Montana Code defines the functions of advisory councils, that they are in fact advisory, meaning furnishing advice, gathering information, and making recommendations, performing other activities. So when I talk about this council being advisory, there is statute that I'm referring to. I do want to say again, I don't think I can emphasize it enough, how much we value that advice in that role. So don't ever feel like the advice you're providing to us is just cursory. It's really not. It's part and parcel of our work. So there is a new makeup of the council, and the makeup and the terms are all set in statute. And as you know, you all received letters from the governor's office appointing you to these positions. It is the governor's office that sets the membership for the council. The state library has a seat on the council. I can be the chair of the council or designate someone to be the chair. The other designated seat is for the State Department of Administration, and they have designated Adam Carpenter, the state data coordinator, state data officer, to chief data officer, to that role for this council. There is a representative of state government, and that representative right now is from the Department of Natural Resources. There's a representative from federal government. Alan is filling that role from the BLM. We have 2 representatives from local government, Lee and Maureen. We have Eric serving the role as the GIS professional, Valentine filling a role from the university system. Brian is serving as a representative representing tribal government interests. As I said, we have another vacancy to fill, a representative from the registered land surveyors and from the private sector. Who am I forgetting? Anyone? I think that does. So a much smaller council than we've worked with. And we're going to talk about this when we conclude the orientation, but it is really designed to be a representative council. One of the concerns that we often had under the larger council was a concern that people might come representing their own interests or what made sense for their agency, their local government. And one of the things that we think will benefit us in this new structure for the council is the idea that we want you to all be in conversation with those who you represent. And we want to talk about how we can best facilitate some of that. But the idea really is that you are representative of larger groups. And we hope that as you're providing us advice and feedback, that we can rely on the fact that that is with an eye to what will benefit everyone in local government, or gosh, Alan, the entire federal government. I mean, that is on your shoulders, sir. So we can talk about more about what that looks like and how we can help to facilitate that kind of representation going forward. In terms of compensation, statute does state that you are eligible for compensation. If you are not employees of a state or political subdivision, you're eligible for a per diem of up to $100 a day. You're also all entitled to be reimbursed for your travel expenses. And this is any time, any day that you are conducting work on behalf or as a member of the council. And Genevieve has useful documentation that's helpful in completing any kind of reimbursement forms that you might need. We know that some of you are funded through the agencies or organizations you represent to sit on that council, and we do appreciate that, but you are eligible to be compensated in this way under the terms found in statute. So Genevieve, is there anything you wanted to say about the reimbursement process now? Okay, yep. If you have questions, Genevieve is our go-to. Just a little bit about meeting norms. We've talked about some of this today as we've talked about the bylaws do need to be revised to better reflect statute and the makeup of the council. We have typically met about 4 times a year with some additional meetings as necessary. We'll talk about what kind of meeting cadence we want to have this year and in coming years. We do try to set our meeting dates at the first meeting of the year so that you can have them in your calendar and plan for them going forward. All of our council meetings are open public meetings. As a board that's described in statute, we are required to meet open public meeting laws. That's just a standard part of our practice. We believe in the transparency and the input that comes through those open meetings. To the best of my ability, I do try to follow Robert's Rules of Order when addressing business decisions of the council, and that allows for public comment in the business that we're conducting. There is an orientation or a Robert's Rules training that is available through the governor's, the board's, and council's website, and you're all able to go online and take that training. So we're happy to send out the link to that information. It's really one of the most helpful Robert's Rules training I have ever taken. A number of our staff have taken it. A number of our commissioners have taken it. So if you want to brush up on your Robert's Rules, I really do recommend it.
I have a question. Are they automatically enrolled on the governor's site?
I
for that?
believe so.
Okay, I'll
I
double
believe
check that
so.
then, and I'll
Yep.
send out the information on that.
Yep.
I was gonna say, I think I've received emails from that page, that site,
Mhm.
if you will.
I think
So,
it's boards.
yeah, something boards.
Yep.
Yeah. So I have received it, because I think they even offered that Robert's Rules.
Yep.
So.
And then we strive to post meeting materials at least a week ahead of your meetings. And I'll show you the website where they're posted in just a minute. I'm sure you all got links to it from Genevieve for this particular meeting, but you should see the agenda posted about a week ahead of time, and any additional meeting materials that we want you to review as well. And so here is that council webpage. And it's just linked from the State Library website under our commissions and councils page. You can always find a list of members and members' contact information. Our meeting dates under meeting materials is where you will find the meeting materials for the upcoming meeting. If we don't have meeting materials posted yet, you'll see the meeting materials from the most recent meeting. The Serve With Us link is an application to the governor's office for people to apply to serve with us. We provide links directly to the statutes and the administrative rules that govern the work of the council. It is this operating procedures document that we know we need to update that we'll be working on over the next couple of months. There's a really rich collection of information about our grant program, and we'll look at some of that here in just a bit, as well as our GIS coordination work. The other thing on this page that I wanted to draw your attention to is the archive of meeting materials, especially for new commissioners. If you want to get an idea of some of the topics that have come to this council over the years, this archive is a really great resource for you. I think it goes back to about 2011 or so, when the council fell under the umbrella of the state library. And then we've talked a bit about the geospatial information plan. As I've said before, statute requires this plan to be developed in consultation with the council. And so at points in time when we decide that we need to make updates to the plan, the goals, the coordination activities, et cetera, that's discussion that we will have with the council. We'll get your input into what the plans and the goals should look like. The statute itself says the plan, as is stated on this slide, may include but is not limited to the needs for collection maintenance and dissemination of data, the priorities for coordination, and the coordination or the priorities for the grant awards. We also seek public comment whenever we are drafting updates to the information plan. And then ultimately, the council, once they're satisfied with the plan, makes some recommendation to the full State Library Commission for adoption of that plan. Anything you would add about the plan? And then we have a full history of those plans available on our website as well.
No, but the archival does go back to original, to
To-
2005,
To the first, okay, good,
but you have to choose the right committee.
okay. We've talked a bit about the Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure. I think most of you may be familiar with this, with the exception of Brian. I think it's worth revisiting here. The Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure is a complement to the National Spatial Data Infrastructure. We have more themes of data in Montana than you'll find with the NSDI. The Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure is 15 geospatial data themes that have been identified and agreed upon really by this council as necessary to meet the information needs of the state of Montana and its citizens. And we actually have a workflow that we've used in the past when there have been recommendations for us to consider adding new themes to the MSDI. And again, that's a decision that ultimately comes through this council itself. I think most recently, climate was the theme that was added to the Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure probably 5 or 6 years ago now. So these are the 15 themes for the Montana Spatial Data Infrastructure, as well as the steward. And again, the steward is that entity that is providing leadership and coordination on the development of the data, the platforms, the services that underpin those data themes. Many of the themes are stewarded by the state library, but there are stewards that fall outside the state library for a number of themes. For example, the climate theme is stewarded by the University of Montana. The geology theme is stewarded by the Bureau of Mines and Geology at Montana Tech. The Natural Resource Conservation Service is the theme steward for the hydrologic units. I won't go through all of them, but all of this information is available on our website. And then each spatial data theme has its own web page where you can find out more information about the theme, how it's used, information about who to contact. The other point I wanted to make about the MSDI and a number of the themes that we administer is that in addition to the theme steward and the lead, as well as this council, several of our themes have their own working groups. And those are people from any variety of sectors who use that data in their work. The leads, the theme stewards convene meetings of these working groups to hear feedback on how we are developing these themes. Oftentimes that work will result in plans for data development, data stewardship, and those plans often come to the council for the council's review and endorsement. So we have a NHD or I think it's an elevation NHD working group at this point that created the original LiDAR plan that ended up coming to the council. We have a land cover working group that has brought plans to this council for review and endorsement. Aaron mentioned earlier that following the imagery summit, we're reconvening an imagery working group. Again, that work group reflects all sectors who use imagery in the state. And we hope that that work group will bring back recommendations to the state library and this council about the kinds of imagery we're collecting, how we're managing it, how we're providing access to it, et cetera. So it's we cast a very wide net when we're seeking input on how we manage these themes of data. I mentioned our staff. You know me, you know Aaron. Evan Hammer was online. Troy Blanford was online. Michael Fashaway was online. Um, Jeff was online briefly. We have other GIS analysts, Matt Trebish, Megan Burns. Bob Holliday is a GIS programmer analyst. In addition to being an analyst, he helps to maintain our GIS architecture. Bob Cochran is a GIS analyst who's specifically focused on next generation 911 work in the state. Carolyn Saltis is one of our GIS specialists, and Pat Jackson is a GIS tech. We are currently recruiting for a term GIS tech position that would be working with us at least through the end of next fiscal year, so June of 2025. And then from time to time, we'll have contract staff or other kinds of term positions to help support our work. Kari was, I'm sorry, not Kari, Kazi was online. Again, he is the coordinator of our real-time network. We do have statutory authority to hire a tech or support person to support Kazi, and plan to recruit that position probably after July 1. And then just a few other folks that you may see or hear from time to time. Kenny Kettner is our library systems programmer and analyst. So he's really sort of leading the programming work that we do at the state library. Right now, one of the things on his plate is working on a rewrite of our cadastral application. Bryce Maxwell is the coordinator for our Montana Natural Heritage Program. They provide access to information about Montana's plants, animals, and habitats, and it's under their authority that we are theme stewards for the wetlands spatial data infrastructure theme, and then Bryce coordinates with the University of Montana on the land cover theme. Jim Kammerer is our government information lead. A lot of the work that we do results in the creation of government information, and one of the other roles of the state library is to ensure permanent public access to state government information, and he's the staff person that coordinates that work. And then Rebecca Camp is our data coordinator. And so you may see her from time to time. She works with us to help us evaluate our work, looking at the goals and objectives and the measurements and how we can better evaluate the effectiveness of the work that we do. You've met Genevieve, our wonderful administrative assistant who keeps us all in line. Melissa Briggs is our central services administrator, so she handles all of our budgeting and accounting work. Sean Anderson is our procurement lead. Those of you who participate in the grant administration program will work closely with him. He helps to coordinate the grant process and sort of the administrative arm of the work that's necessary to do that. Lee Fossum is our IT lead, helping to manage our overall agency IT and administration. Joe Chisoni is our database administrator and GIS service support. He's heavily involved in maintaining our GIS database infrastructure. And then Michael Lightheiser is an IT system administrator, also providing IT support. So we have just absolutely fantastic staff. We're so fortunate with the support that we have from all of them. I wanted to talk a little bit about the funding source for the work that we do. In statute, in Title VII, is a recording fee for documents that are recorded at the county level. This fee was first established when the Land Information Act was passed back in 2005. And in 2021, we were able to increase the amount of funding that's collected through the recordation fee for GIS work. In statute, there are county land information accounts, and 50 cents of every $2 that's collected per page for the recordation fee is deposited in that account. And then $1.50 per page is transmitted to the Department of Revenue and deposited in our land or now geospatial information account. And it's that funding that is the primary funding source for our GIS coordination work, a lot of our GIS data development, and the grant program that we administer. If you're interested in the budget for how we budget those dollars, that information is always available online. And we provide quarterly reporting to the State Library Commission, and that's available to all of you as well. I think roughly we generate, I think it's around 1.8 million or so a year in revenue. That's fluctuated quite a bit. We saw a significant increase in revenue during the pandemic when there was such a housing boom in Montana. No surprise, given that real estate is primary source for those documents that are recorded. It's started to taper off a little bit. So if you're ever interested in knowing more about the balance and what that looks like, again, that information is available online. We're happy to take a look at that.
And we're almost coming up to 3 full years, right?
Mhm.
We were studying that to understand what a stable budget
What
would
is
look like
exactly? Yep.
with the new.
Yep.
Right, it'll be the end of this fiscal year.
Yep. That'll give us three full years. Yep.
Was it one of those years kind of an anomaly year,
Early on, it was definitely an anomaly because we were just
2020?
coming out of that.
It didn't change till 21,
Mhm,
so
Okay.
it would have been like July, so
Mhm.
maybe we would still see those impacts.
mhm. Yep.
Mm.
And then,
Do you have, and sorry about that.
no, please.
You had that, have you updated that story map? That you
We're in
did
the
years
process
ago,
of doing
a couple
that.
years ago?
Right,
Cause that's what I used to remind my county fiscal guys that, hey, we've got some money.
Mhm.
So,
oh, yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
and they're like, oh, okay, so,
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, we're working on a process to automate that,
okay.
because there's kind of some heavy-handed stuff that we have to do. And so the other thing maybe to discuss in the working
Mhm.
group is like, how do you want to see certain reports?
Yep. Good. The other point I wanted to make about our funding is we have this dedicated revenue source. We have a couple of other sources of revenue as well. I mentioned that Bob Cochran is our 911 GIS analyst. His position and his work is funded through the state 911 account. We receive, I should be able to remember this. How much do we receive each year? We wrote that legislation, I should know. But we receive an amount of money each year from that account to fund his position as well as the tools that he uses to help coordinate with local governments on the adoption of next generation 911 at the local level. And then we get grants and contracts, for example, contracts that we receive through other state agencies to help them with different kinds of projects. For example, Erin and her staff have been working closely with the Secretary of State's office on a geo-enabled elections project now for a couple of years, and that funding is ongoing. So that funding also helps to fund some of the staff work of the agency. And then, again, all of our authority to spend these dollars comes through the legislature. So we collect revenue into our land information account, but then we also have to have the legislative authority to spend that money. And so that often involves conversations with the legislature about how much authority we need each biennium to spend to support the programs that we have. And any funding that we don't spend just stays in that account for future projects, additional grants, other kinds of work. We've talked a bit about the MGI grant program. Again, that's a program that's found in statute. It's one of the requirements that the state library administers the program. The priorities or goals for the grant award, at least at a high level, are described in the Geospatial Information Plan. we have a really rich history of the projects that have been funded over the years. So as you have time, I really encourage you to take a look at some of that information. There's information about where across the state the grants have been awarded, the types of projects that have been awarded, and many of the fantastic outcomes that have occurred because of the grant funds that we're able to make available. An example of the dashboard that we maintain that shows kind of the 5-year history of the grant program. And again, just really encourage you to get in and poke around and see the impact of the work that we have.
Yeah. It's time.
That's funny.
This is also a tool for the grant program itself,
Mhm.
because part of the grant application process is you have to demonstrate sustainability.
Mhm.
And even, even if you're, a local government, let's say roads department got a grant, and the local government clerk or recorder, really, sometimes those workflows don't have a lot to do with each other in certain cases. We want to understand, because coordination is so important, how they're maintaining that data over time, or whatever process or workflow, and to demonstrate that GIS should be coordinated throughout all sectors. It's a little more difficult when you get up to the state level, but
Mhm. And then at the end of the orientation, I just put some links to some information resources that I think will be helpful for you. One of the requirements under the previous legislation was that we provide a biennial legislative report to the legislature. We're no longer mandated to do that, although we do a lot of reporting to the legislature. But there's again, a rich history of reports to the legislature that document the impact that the work of under this legislation, going back to the very early days of the legislation. So really great archive of work, information about the grant program. Linked from our website are access to the data that we maintain. Aaron mentioned the data list and the data clearinghouse, all of our maps and applications. We have a geography fast facts link. We have thrown out a ton of acronyms at you today, so apologies for that, but there is a link to a list of acronyms if you're not familiar with them that we use. And then one of the easiest ways to learn more about our work and to stay up to date with our work is to sign up for email updates from the state library. We use a service called Gov Delivery to provide those email updates to you. And so you can sign up by topics to learn more about the work. So if you're just interested in GIS coordination and that work, you can sign up for email updates on those, but you can also sign up for updates on RTN and a wide variety of work of the agency.
I'll drop that link in the chat.
Great. Thanks, Genevieve. All right. So high level, but I hope that gives you a little bit more context for the history and the work of the council. What questions might you have for us?
Jenny, can you explain how much we're supposed to get paid for this again? I forgot that part.
Let's see, is Alan as a federal rep, is he eligible for per diem or no?
Oh, just kidding.
Well, is he a subset of the Montana government? He's an over.
Yeah, because it's specific to state government or political subdivisions. I don't know.
Dang, I missed that. Darn.
Oh,
Get $100, Alan.
they actually increased it in this last legislative session. It used to only be 50.
Yeah.
Is that what the state uses for all, I guess, boards and committees and legislators and whatnot?
Legislators are different. They have their own per diem, but that requirement is for all the boards and councils.
Okay.
Jenny, I have a question about like how are the different representatives chosen? Like there's one state representative now, one federal. Like how do we choose who those are going to be?
It was our staff working closely with the governor's office to identify individuals that bring knowledge and expertise in the area and an interest in serving. And then the governor's office reached out and contacted individuals to find out about their interest in serving.
I think you also can
Thanks.
apply.
There is an application process.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm gonna, historically, when my role in past councils, I was one of the local government reps, so I kind of understood who I was representing in that aspect of things. So now with this one under coming from the GIS professionals, who should I be polling for? Or who should I be reaching out to be representing? Would that be just solely through the MEGIP organization, just the MEGIP listserv, just through, because when you were going through the orientation, I made this comment to myself about, well, do I drop something into the MEGIP listserv and saying, with the establishment of the new council, this is my position, this is what I'm representing. And so if you have something you wish to bring to the council, maybe you can go through me first, or quite honestly, I don't know why they just couldn't approach Aaron or someone at the council in general, but I guess do we have specific, I guess that's just leaving that as that question like that, I guess.
And that was actually the next thing we wanted to try to talk about in this work session is what does that look like to be representative? I think Eric, for you, you're exactly right. Letting MEGIP membership know that, you have been appointed in this position and seeking feedback through them, encouraging participation from others who might not be MEGIP members to be involved in MEGIP and to be in contact with you. I agree with you that, GIS professionals can always contact Aaron. But I think then in instance of questions of how decisions or opportunities might impact the wider GIS profession, there would be an expectation that she might contact you and ask you for your opinion or to help her seek input from the wider GIS professional community.
And I think you are the rep now. Do we do that today? You're the rep on their board for MLA. I was just going to say, certainly you're representing GIS professionals, but you're also representing the organization. So a conversation with their board, their leadership about how they'd like to see things brought forward. I think there will be times, a lot of times it's just going to be you making the call based on what you think GIS professionals would want. But there will be times, I think, when things happen, when a statement from the board might be useful to have if they're interested or willing. Yeah, anything you can do to help there.
I think I will point out with that, though, we've had this conversation before that this representative is not required to be a member of MEGIP. So it's that MEGIP is the easy way to contact, but it's not the only audience. If making that clear that if there are others outside of that community, that you're open as well. Yeah. But how do you contact them and make that known? MEGIP's the way, right?
Yeah, because I understood that because when I've looked at the new rules, new legislation, I saw that it was GIS professional. It wasn't necessarily a Montana Association of GIS Professionals member. It was, it could be anyone who's practicing GIS, but they're not a member of MEGIP, type of thing is potential. Is I guess how I looked at it as well. So I'll just have to figure out my best ways of dealing with that.
I think we have to be reasonable.
Yeah,
That.
I mean,
that is the
listserv, I mean,
organization to go to, but you can be open to.
yeah, the
others.
listserv is gonna be the primary, and I know the listserv, cause I've told many people, just, you don't need to be a member to be on the listserv.
Yeah, I
So-
think that makes that listserv extremely valuable that it is
And-
free.
And so I don't know how many people I've told that to and how many of them, they're like, oh, really? I said, yeah, just get on it, sign up for it. So yeah, okay, perfect, thank you.
I do have one point of clarification, is that Jenny said that we adopted climate like 5 years ago, and I'm like, what's that like? And I think everything feels like 5 years ago to me at this point, like,
Was it a long?
but it was 2013.
Oh, wow. All right.
I was like, had to be longer ago than that, but you know how everything starts to blur together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, for
Yeah.
sure. For sure. Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think he started. I remember it coming up when I was on the council. Yep. I know. I know. But it's funny to go back through these old, this is awesome. Yeah. What? When? That was one of the originals, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
remember that too. Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
on Tuesday, June 18th, 2013, we were discussing oblique LiDAR or oblique imagery.
Because that was a legislative session. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Department of Revenue
Mm-hmm.
is need for imagery.
Uh-huh.
Yes, I know. Yeah. And our GIS enterprise governance and architecture. And potential MLA rules change.
It's funny.
That's awesome. So anyway,
On the topic of history, Jenny, you mentioned MJIC earlier, briefly. Something I'll ask to have added to the end of the orientation is I did just a presentation. I think you guys were all here, but for those that weren't here, just on the history
Right.
of coordination,
Yeah.
prior to MLA existing. So we'll just add that to the page. So
Good
people
point.
have that
Yeah, I like
background.
well, you need to update it now with the MGAC change.
I stopped at 2005.
No,
I
you have
think
to
you
go
took the
to- you have to-
2005.
You have to go to present.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we probably could
Mhm.
pause recording.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the orientation, yeah. We don't have a lot of time.
I'll stop
Left to
recording the
talk,
section
but-
for the orientation now.
What other questions do you have about this idea of sort of being more of a representative council? I don't think we can be prescriptive